It's time for our weekly update on Kirk Cousins, and there's some intriguing news coming from Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer as we head into the NFL draft. Breer suggests that while the Cleveland Browns are looking less likely as a destination for Cousins, the Pittsburgh Steelers could be a potential landing spot, especially if Aaron Rodgers decides against signing with them. Let's dive into the possibility of the Steelers pursuing Cousins if Rodgers opts out. If Rodgers doesn't end up in Pittsburgh, it could create a quarterback vacancy, making a team desperate for Cousins. This scenario could benefit the Falcons either by securing a valuable draft pick or by relieving them of Cousins' salary. Now, I have a few theories to share regarding why Rodgers hasn't signed with the Steelers yet. Theory number 1. Rodgers loves the spotlight. He enjoys being the center of attention and thrives on the discussions surrounding him. He likes to control the narrative as seen when he appeared on his friend Pat McAfee's show. When the conversation is about him and his future, he can stretch it out as long as he wants, keeping everyone guessing. Theory number 2 revolves around the NFL draft. Rodgers might be waiting to see how the draft unfolds, particularly if the Steelers decide to draft a quarterback. At 41 years old, he shouldn't expect to join a team that views him as their long-term starter. If he were to sign with Pittsburgh and they drafted a young quarterback like Shedeur Sanders in the first round, it wouldn't be surprising. After all, he's not in a position to expect a long tenure with any team at this stage in his career. Theory number 3 suggests that Rodgers could be waiting for the Minnesota Vikings to reach out, completing a sort of Brett Favre circle in the NFL. The parallels between Rodgers and Favre's career paths are striking. While he may not be trying to follow in Favre's footsteps, the opportunity to play against the Packers, his former team, could be appealing. Additionally, the Vikings are in a better position to win, and teaming up with talents like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison could give him a better shot at another Super Bowl ring compared to a Steelers team that has struggled to find playoff success in recent years. Finally, theory number 4 posits that Rodgers might just want to retire. While he has shown some interest in playing, it's hard to believe he would go through the motions of meeting with the Steelers if he truly wanted to hang up his cleats. Of all these theories, I find theory number 3 the most compelling. Rodgers could be waiting for the Vikings to decide whether they want to invest in a young quarterback like J.J. McCarthy or if they need a seasoned player like Rodgers as an insurance policy. After all, it wasn't too long ago that quarterbacks often sat for a couple of years before taking the reins. Now, the big question for the Falcons is whether they genuinely want Kirk Cousins as their backup or if they've been bluffing all along. They've done a great job of projecting confidence in keeping Cousins as a backup, but if that's the case, it's not a difficult facade to maintain. However, if they're trying to create the impression that they want to keep Cousins, it could lead to a team overpaying for him, knowing that Atlanta is reluctant to let him go. It seems the Falcons are waiting for a team like the Steelers to come calling about Kirk Cousins. This is an important topic to explore further because there are risks involved for Atlanta in this approach. If they hold on to Cousins into the summer with the hope of trading him, he might decide, with his family now settled in Atlanta, that he's less inclined to leave in a last-minute trade situation. That could spell trouble for the Falcons if they genuinely want to move Cousins. If the anticipated scenario with Pittsburgh doesn't unfold, say if Aaron Rodgers decides to retire and the Steelers come looking for Cousins, Atlanta could find themselves in a tough spot. Imagine heading into training camp, realizing that the one team they thought would be desperate for Cousins isn't interested after all. If the Browns are unwilling to meet their asking price and Rodgers ends up in Pittsburgh, the Falcons could be stuck with a quarterback they don't want on their roster. They'd prefer a backup who is content with that role, not someone who has met with the owner and has a list of reasons why he wants to be a starter elsewhere. This could lead to a situation where the Falcons are banking on a training camp injury to create a trade opportunity. But even if that happens, what's stopping Cousins from saying, "Nope, I have a no-trade clause and I don't want to go to that situation"? He might not want to join a new team just before the season starts, trying to learn a new playbook on the fly. Instead, he could choose to stay put, making the Falcons pay him to be an expensive backup or even opting to sit out the season and prepare for a fresh start in 2026. If that happens, the Falcons would miss out on 2 key things. First, they'd be out $10 million, which is a lot for most people but might not be a big deal for the organization. It wouldn't count against the salary cap. It would just be Arthur Blank writing a check. Second, they'd lose the chance to find a better backup earlier. If they realize in August that Cousins isn't going to waive his no-trade clause, they might have to tell him to stay home for the season. That would leave them scrambling to find a new backup quarterback in mid-August, wishing they had acted sooner when they could have secured a better option or drafted a quarterback they liked more. So, for what feels like the 10th time, will Kirk Cousins be a Falcon in Week 1? I still believe the answer is no, and I could be wrong, but I just don't see why the Falcons would want to bring this situation into their locker room. There's nothing to suggest that Cousins would be a happy backup, and having a disgruntled player sitting behind your starting quarterback isn't ideal. Now, if that first half felt a bit gloomy, I have some news that I think you'll find exciting, and it has nothing to do with Kirk Cousins. So stick around for that. But first, let's talk about a different NFC South team, the New Orleans Saints. The situation with Derek Carr is quite strange. At first glance, it might not seem too unusual, but after digging a little deeper, I think you'll agree that it's a bit peculiar. Let me lay out the timeline for you. Let's rewind to day 1 when Derek Carr joined the New Orleans Saints, reuniting with his former coach Dennis Allen from their time together with the Raiders. Carr signed a 4-year, $150 million contract, and things started off well. However, his time in New Orleans quickly became complicated due to injuries. In 2023, he suffered a shoulder injury, which he played through, but he also missed a significant portion of 2024 due to a hand injury and a concussion. Over 2 years, Carr has faced numerous health challenges. This offseason, Carr had his contract restructured. To break it down simply, contract restructures usually happen without the player's consent. Essentially, the team lowers the player's base salary to the minimum and spreads the difference over the remaining years of the contract as signing bonuses. This strategy helps teams like the Saints manage their salary cap, allowing them to spend more in the short term while creating challenges for future seasons. Unfortunately for New Orleans, this gamble hasn't paid off as they had hoped. When Carr's contract was restructured, it lowered his cap hit for this year, but increased it for the following years, making it harder for the Saints to move on from him in the future. This move effectively locked him in for the current season, and it was something the team could do without his approval. I can't help but wonder if, after the Saints parted ways with Dennis Allen and brought in Kellen Moore, Carr wanted a change of scenery. If he felt that New Orleans wasn't the right fit, the Saints' decision to restructure his contract might have left him feeling trapped. In response, Carr might have played the only card he had, the injury card. He could exaggerate his shoulder injury from 2023, claiming he doesn't want to be there, which would allow him to collect his paycheck without playing. While this theory might sound a bit far-fetched, the sudden emergence of a shoulder issue is certainly suspicious. If this were to happen, the Saints would find themselves in a much worse situation than the Falcons. They'd be left with options like Spencer Rattler or Jake Haener, which wouldn't inspire much confidence. If New Orleans decides to reach for a quarterback in the draft, say at pick 9, they might consider players like Jackson Dart or Shedeur Sanders. However, that could be seen as a stretch, especially given their current roster needs. If they miss on a quarterback, they'd not only be left searching for a franchise player, but also waste a top 10 draft pick that could have addressed other pressing needs. If things go south for the Saints and Carr misses time due to injury, they could be forced into a panic pick at 9, potentially setting them up for a disastrous 2025 season. They might even find themselves in a position to tank for Arch Manning, who may or may not enter the draft in 2026. The plan was for him to spend 2 years at Texas, but who knows how that will play out. As we look ahead, it's clear that the Saints are in a precarious position. While they've been poking fun at Kirk Cousins' contract, Carr's situation isn't looking much better. So, who do you think will win the NFC South in 2025? Will someone finally dethrone the Buccaneers, or could a dark horse like the Panthers emerge? Personally, I'm picking the New Orleans Saints to finish last in the division. That wraps up today's episode. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you in a few hours for a company-wide mock draft where I'll be making selections for Atlanta. If you want to join us, we'll be starting at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, enjoy your Thursday morning.